How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, great discussion coming our way today. We're going to talk about being a young supervisor. It's going to be a great dialogue because we're going to talk about some of the obstacles that young supervisors may face. But I want to do it with two perspectives. I want to talk about, it from the perspective of the young supervisor, but I also want to talk about it from those that are going to be under their supervision. So as we have this dialogue and we cover these 5 points, we're going to kind of go back and forth between both perspectives. My guests today are going to be Connie, Alleyne, and Joe Pomponio. Real quick, guys, just want to go over my sponsors before we start. So we have American Military University. If you guys are looking to get a degree, seek higher education, guys, please check out American Military University. They're a great school, great online school, a lot of great classes that they offer. And again, very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. Also very supportive of what we do here in corrections. And guys, by the way, I get a lot of people that are commenting on my channel that actually are going to American Military University. So I think that's pretty awesome to, know that they're watching this and then they're taking the advice and then they're seeking that higher level education in their effort to bring experience into the classroom. That's a t-shirt. That's a t-shirt right there. And it will never be made. Failure on so many levels. It will never be made. Connie knows. You can't see her, but I can see her. And she knows because she's got all these t-shirt ideas written out. That's all written out, but they just stay written in her room. They don't go anywhere. Put something on the market. Guardian RFID. Guys, from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence, Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit GuardianRFID.com for more information. Guys, again, another company very supportive of what we do in corrections. Please check out their YouTube channel, subscribe. They got a lot of interesting content, tips and advice about the profession, but they also got some content that shows you some of the technology that they provide to our correctional facilities, prisons, and jails. And guys, we also have Inmate Manipulation Decoded. That's available on Amazon. Guys, this book has actually been picking up on sales. I'm very proud of it. I don't know, all of a sudden it just started taking off a little bit more. So if you guys are interested, it's good for training. I do bulk sales. I believe I could do 100 books for $1,000. Just reach out to me at gangianthony@yahoo.com. That's my email. But if not, you want to get it solo, the link to that is in my description. It's on Amazon. And we also have Lessons Learned While Working in the Prison, My Journey from Officer to Administration. Guys, this is a great book. A lot of tips, a lot of advice. It's a bigger book. But it's not just me providing the advice. I provide the passages, but I also have people that are from the profession submitting quotes that add to the passages that we provide. And guys, if you guys get a chance, American Jail Association releases a quarterly magazine. If you guys get a chance in May and June, I'll have a good article that's going to be published for them. I just got submitted. It got approved, and it's about connecting to this profession. It was off a dialogue that we had not too long ago where we brought up connection is all about commitment and having that commitment to each other. It was a shared dialogue with myself, Connie, and I believe Russ and Joe. I believe all 4 of us was in that show that day. And it's a great show. If you get a chance, please check it out. It's doing very well. All right, let me get Connie on. Connie!
Hello. You got me up late again. I am up late waiting for you guys.
It's going to be... I'm actually going to upload it at 8 in the morning, so it's going to confuse the hell out of people. They're going to think that, being up late is at 8 in the morning.
God.
No, right now it is 7:30 at night.
It is 10:35 p.m.
Are you at? Where are you at?
Whatever.
What's going on, Connie?
Hi, everybody. I am Connie Alleyne. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I am also the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. And of course, I am looking forward to our conversation today, just because, I think I've had the experience of being a younger manager, managing sort of my older direct reports. And there's certainly many challenges that come along with that. So I look forward to us diving into it.
And we look forward to hearing these stories. And guys, as I said, me, Connie, and Joe put 5 good tips that we think most of us would relate to. And speaking of Joe, what's up, Joe?
Evening, everybody. How are y'all?
Good. Joe, you mind introducing yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Joe Pomponio. I'm a retired lieutenant with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice of 30 years, also a retired sheriff's deputy, Army vet and just flat old.
Stop. Hey guys, Joe is starting to get his hand in some writing as well. He's got hopefully an article that will be published soon. We're going to try to work on that, and then hopefully he'll work on his book. But he wrote a good article based on the escape Gonzalo Lopez out of Texas, just his feelings, and we'll see if we can get that published for you guys to take a look at. If we have a little trouble getting it published, I could still always post it on my sites and even on here, or maybe we'll give Joe a show and he could just read the article, and just have some coffee a night with Joe. Joe wouldn't mind that.
Not at all.
As long as he got his coffee. So this is going to be a good topic, guys. I think it's going to be fun. I just want to mention something too. When me and Connie were out in Nebraska a few years back, I remember a young kid that one of his questions he asked, because we were having a panel discussion, and guys, you can check out that video. It's up there on the channel. And as we were doing our round, and it's crazy because the panel discussion is about 4 hours. And because it was such a healthy dialogue, we pretty much only got to 5 questions. That's how much of a perspective is given from the different people. It's very good dialogue. But the gentleman grabbed the microphone and basically he stated that he recently became a supervisor, but he felt that he was too young. He didn't want the position. I believe he was forced into it. And basically it was about him accepting the position. And that was a great idea. We actually did the topic way back when, but we're always going to add something. We feel we can add something. We'll do a whole nother show on it. But I remember thinking like, wow, this is actually a very good topic because it's happening lately, with the understaffing, people are getting promoted a lot sooner. And, in the end, are we promoting people that are ready? That's the key. But can we not promote them? At this point. So before we get into the dialogue, Connie, do you find this happening more often right now? Younger people are getting promoted quicker?
So, yeah, I think younger people are pretty eager, right? And so they're coming in wanting to step into these roles. Questionable whether or not they're prepared, right? But at least they want it, right? They could see some trajectory of their career and they've got the energy and the sort of enthusiasm to kind of be looking at the next level up. And then I think too, we've got retirements happening. We've got people who are transitioning out. And so by default, there are probably some young folks who are going to be getting moved up, and sort of like the discussion we had in Nebraska, who they themselves don't think they're ready, but they are the body in the space and they are kind of next in line to get moved in. So yeah, I think we'll see more of this happening.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, Joe. Do you believe as we move up the younger supervisors, are we losing anything in that exchange? Is there anything that as we get more younger supervisors to move up, are we losing any core values in the process?
I don't think we're necessarily losing core values. Like Connie said, as new supervisors are coming in, us older hands are on our way out. We're not necessarily losing anything in core values. We're just starting back over again with a fresh batch, new energy, new drive. I don't think it necessarily jeopardizes the core values. It depends on who you're promoting, what you're promoting. You got some pretty young kids out there that are mature for their age and have the drive and the initiative. Compared to us old hands, we're kind of dead set in our ways and not trying to hear a whole lot at this point in our stage of life. So, but just to promote somebody young, now we're not losing any core values. We're just taking a chance on somebody who's sometimes questioning, should we be taking the chance on them to begin with?
Yeah, and guys, I want to mention something. So, and we'll go over in one of our points here, but. The one thing right now is as we move people up, we have to always have our open ears to what the agency has to always represent. We can never let external pressure sacrifice what those core values are. So yes, it's good to sometimes see young leadership step in. It's in the effort to evolve the agency, but remember, evolve means growth. It doesn't mean change. So having said that, in our effort to evolve, we have to make sure that the new people coming in that may have to step up into that role, they're aware of what the core values are. And to be honest with you, that's something that is going to come from the bottom up, because yes, we could push it, don't get me wrong, down. But to be honest with you, when that person takes that supervisory position, they need to be open to the people that they supervise, because those people are usually the ones that are closest to those core values, because they're the most affected. So definitely, I get it, top down, but really the heart of that dialogue is going to come from the front line up, because that's what they're going to need to connect to that new supervisor. Because again, the fear is always going to be change. We all are afraid of change, especially when we get a new supervisor coming in, a young supervisor. Oh my God, what are they going to have us do? This is crazy. But if you could somehow still stay connected to those core values, it's not really change now, it's growth. And at that point, I'm going to tell everybody, you got to make the effort. You can't just stay still, not in today's world. So again, if you're new and you're young, you got to know those core values, because that's going to be your foundation in that position to grow. And I think that's something that we can connect with as more senior staff on that front line. We don't want to break away from that. Once you start breaking away from that, everybody gets afraid. And that's the truth, in my opinion. So let's go. The first point we mentioned was, now I want you to listen to how I wrote this: evaluated experience versus passive time. The reason why I said evaluated experience is experience for the sake of experience has no value unless you're evaluating and learning from the lessons that are being taught. So I'll start with Connie first. So Connie, you got someone coming in that's young, and a lot of people will say, well, this person, how could they get promoted? They only have a few years in. It's crazy because they measure it by time. Some of us may see, time may be one thing, but it's really evaluated experience that matters. So what's your thoughts on evaluated experience versus passive time? And what does it mean when someone says passive time?
Sure. So for me, I think of that as, this could be a young person who just transferred into the facility, but who worked someplace else that was always hopping, that was completely always busy. They've dealt with so many things coming into that facility. Their breadth of experience in the time that they were in that facility could be completely different from someone who might have been in a more relaxed or low key or less chaotic, less drama filled, however you want to look at it. I mean, I've said in the past, you've got some sleepy facilities where there's not much going on, right? Everything's kind of status quo. And then you've got those facilities that you are popping from the time you walk in. And so if you've started your career in one of those facilities where you're constantly on the go, you're constantly getting into something, learning something, you're getting pulled here and there and everywhere, that gives you a different level of experience, even though you might not have been on the job for so long. You might have seen things happening in that huge facility over there that you would never see in this facility over here. So I think that sometimes we give more value to the time than we do to the evaluated experience. Although, I mean, I can say, someone who comes in with a year of experience still doesn't know all of or most of what someone who's been in for 20 years, even if they were in a sleepy facility, right? Because the things that they're experiencing there, the happenings, the history, all the stuff here, how all these policies evolved, like they've got that internal knowledge that like you live it and learned it, as opposed to the person who's walking in and they're just going to read the manual,
Yeah, and I love that, guys, because to be honest with you, I mean, you could have people that in a short amount of time have experienced so much depending on the facility, but it also goes beyond the experience. Like Connie said, it's really evaluating and then learning. I mean, that's the key, because we're never going to be perfect. So what could I do better? And always ask yourself, could I have done something better? Could I have done something better? Even if you felt the moment which was perfect, which it never really is, could I have done something better? Could I have done something better? So I think the evaluate experience matters, because you could find a lot of young bucks right now that really question themselves through every moment, because they hold themselves maybe to some level of standard that they want to reach, not in an effort to chase something that they cannot reach, just an effort to chase something to be better, not to be the best, but to be better, to hold themselves to good standards each and every time they do it, adapting and adjusting, if you will. But again, it's that evaluated experience that just makes them better at the game. And then you get some people who just passively say, well, I've been here 20 years and okay, but have you really, passively, right? Okay. You've done your time passively, but have you really evaluated your every move that you made, every experience that you had? I mean, that's what we do. Me, Connie, Joe, Russ, we evaluate our experiences and then we put it back on the show so we could provide lessons. And we're hoping that through those lessons, you guys could take something of value. And again, I really don't think that automatically comes with 20 years on the job. That's just a mindset that you have the moment you get in. That could literally, guys, if you have that type of mindset, 3 years could be 20 years. No, I'm just saying, if you're sitting there playing out that code 20, 30 times in your head of things that you could have done better, that experience adds on. And that evaluation is like, yeah, again, that question, what could I have done better? And what's your thoughts, Joe, about the passive time versus the evaluated experience, the what if game, if you will, to some extent?
Yeah, I mean, it is a what if game. And like Connie said, you have individuals that, such as myself, after I came through the academy, I went straight to a maximum security farm. You basically had to prove yourself and show your way. Whereas in today's society now, it's not the case. You got people coming out of the academy going to these little 500 bed, warm and fuzzy, almost trustee style camps. And, the correlation between the two are so different as far as experience wise. And I left a max farm, went to a little warm and fuzzy 500 bed for a few years. And, as I got closer towards my retirement, I went back to a maximum farm because that's, I started out on a max farm. I wanted to retire on a max farm. And, when I got there, the me being able to just hit the ground running was a good thing because based on my experience, as a new supervisor coming in, you basically have two types. You got the two that you got the one that hits the ground running because they've had some sort of experience in their life, with the correctional facilities. And, you have COs out there that some correctional officers out there that have more knowledge than supervisors because they live it every day. They're in them uses of forces. They're in the force cell move teams all the time. They're doing the use of force paperwork. And you have supervisors on smaller facilities that hadn't seen a use of force packet in 10 years because their facility is loaded with geriatrics. And the only packet they've ever done is death packets, so
Joe, I have to say, I really appreciate that comparison. I swear, like that made it so livable for me when you said you've got some where, they're completing the death packets, right? Like, because really, what does that say about what's happening in that facility?
Exactly. I mean, depending on the type of facility you're at, you're either counting living, breathing bodies or you're making notifications of next of kin and calling the chaplain 3-4 times a night, and you literally have COs that are working on maximum unit facilities that have better insight, better working knowledge of policy and protocol than some supervisors that are assigned to these little small farms. So, experience, yes, it means some depending on where you're assigned. But you have the type of individual that comes in and hits the ground running. And to me, what passive time means to me is the supervisor that just got promoted, instead of making themselves known, they come in and they watch. They observe things for an extended period of time to see how the facility operates before they start putting their foot down and making their move on how they're going to supervise. Because I don't know how it is there, but the several facilities in Texas, they operate different. Obviously, a max farm operates a hell of a lot different than a trustee camp full of geriatrics. So each facility has its different processes, and these newly promoted supervisors, if they're not promoted on the same facility, and they decide to promote to a different facility, then that's where the complications begin, because you're taking somebody from a max farm, putting them on a minimum farm, and then you gotta find some way to help them pump the brakes a little bit because they're used to running and gunning, and now we're handing out dribble cups and Jello night on Wednesdays, and at the geriatric farms, And you know, the other side of it is you're taking somebody from this little 500 bed who thinks, you know, because they watched an A&E episode of Lockup, they're going to go to a Max farm and everything's going to go just like it does on that TV show. And they hit that ground and they're like, oh shit, you know? So to me, evaluated experience, it doesn't matter whether, to me, it didn't matter whether you're young or old. As long as you were mature enough, you had your head in the game, and you were good to your people. I mean, that's all that really mattered to me.
Yeah, I think I love what you're saying, Joe, because for me, the evaluated experience is all about asking yourself the right questions. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, it literally is. I mean, I do it. I'm very insightful. I ask myself 20 questions to make sure that I'm okay with my next step. And it's funny because people think it's a lot of work. Believe it or not, it just happens for me now automatically. You know, it does. And then you start to fall into that as a great habit to have, you know, and then and as for passive time, what I mean by passive time is more of just letting the profession, you not being intentional with anything, just letting the profession and everything around you happen to you, as opposed to you happening to, you know, you being the one, you being intentional and doing something with the profession itself. And then I want to mention something you mentioned too about evaluate experience. So basically, the reason why I always say that people should start at the highest level of security is because having evaluate experience based on the parameters of those policies and procedures at the highest level, to me, is the greatest fail-safe. It is. Because I believe that you could always comfortably work down because you have a great foundation. I think the other way, working up, is a very big concern because of the consequences behind that. Like, I'd rather lock the door than leave it unlocked, if that makes any sense, you know? So I get that there's going to be more interactions with the inmate population. Yes, there's a lot to learn in those minimum side. I get that. But you still got to have the foundation, which is basically that there's still an inmate. You got to have that safety and security mindset. And that kind of is what filters your experience into something that I feel can be universal. Granted, yeah, you're going to have to adapt and adjust a little to every new location you go to, but be advised, you know, you really can't separate where you've been 100% to where you're going, because that's a lot of your knowledge. Like, I hate when people say, well, forget everything you learned at the last facility. No, because then I'm not coming in as a supervisor. You know, I have experiences. I know it can apply here, but that's up for me to see how that's going to work. Like, I'm not here to reinvent the wheel. But having said that, for you to tell me not to listen to my experiences that I'm bringing in, well, then you don't have a growth mindset. You know, because I'm coming in here and I'm going to try to see if there's things that I can do to help make our day safer and, you know, just, you know, I'm not saying more convenient, but safer and a bit more, I don't want to say easier either, because corrections, I know if it was another job you could say, but a safer day, you know, a day that we can trust in. And again, evaluate experience versus passive time, guys. If you're young right now and you go through experiences, ask yourself the right questions, really learn from it, play the what if, and you'll be shocked within a matter of a couple of years where you're at in your game, as opposed to someone who never does that and where they're at in their game 20 years down the line. This was a good one. I believe this one came from Connie, right? Connie, this one's yours? Mm-hmm. So, Connie, you want to introduce this thought?
Sure. So what I was thinking at that point is that both the younger manager and the older direct report are having some feeling of insecurity and vulnerability in the moment, right? So whether it is, what is this young person going to come teach me? Or whether it be, oh my goodness, I can't tell them what to do, right? There's that level of vulnerability that I don't know everything, and they're going to look at me like I'm stupid if I don't know how to answer these questions. But also there is that acknowledgement, I think, of, so yeah, you know what? They don't know everything, but I could be part of the process of teaching, right? So I think there is a way that the younger manager has to be able to come in and be humble and sort of acknowledge that they're vulnerable in these areas, whatever areas those are for them. And then I think it's the older person being able to acknowledge that you know what, this young kid might be able to teach me something, right? And I think being able to accept that, right? Like that, yeah, you might have been here longer, you've got, age on this person. That doesn't mean that they don't have anything to offer or to be able to teach you. And so I think in both of those spaces, you are going to feel some level of vulnerability or insecurity. Because, even if the approach, like you might be a little more timid with the approach, because you're maybe not as confident, because you think your knowledge might not be where it needs to be as it relates to your older direct report. But I feel like that the reality is that it's an interesting work dynamic for both parties involved. And so there's I guess some discomfort until you guys get into a groove. And then it's like, oh, I kind of know what you know what I don't know. We're going to kind of help sort of, bridge that knowledge gap between the both of us, right? Whether it's me trying to explain up or humbling myself to be able to receive the information from that more tenured person who has seen this already, right? Who can give me some insights to help me get through this stage of my career. So, I mean, I think that for me, that's where I was coming from with being able to embrace that vulnerability that you're going to come to this situation with, as well as whatever your insecurities are.
Yeah, and guys, vulnerability now is being accepted by a lot of leaders now because they believe it leads to the road of authenticity and trust, obviously, and human connection. They believe that vulnerability allows us to connect more. And I know in corrections, we don't like hearing that word vulnerability, but vulnerability leaves us open to accept things that we may not normally want to because we're afraid to. So again, like Connie said, being supervised by a younger person, I mean, how does that make you feel? And then asking yourself, what is it about this person being young that, I just can't relate to it. And sometimes, guys, it's really just probably a stereotype. It's a stereotype that you just can't work around. Like, oh, well, I'm going to generalize that all young people are impulsive and blah, 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 whatever it is, or they're not ready. It's like, yeah, but you haven't even given this person a chance. So the stereotype isn't working, but sometimes we'd rather keep ourselves closed off because it's easier just to put the person in the stereotype as opposed to really letting yourself be vulnerable and allowing this interaction, this connection to occur. And again, also from the other side as well, you can't go in thinking that because you're young, the old boots aren't going to listen to you. The first thing you have to do is maybe adapt and adjust your approach, because each individual you're going to have a different different dynamic with, if you will. You're not going to be in the same space with everyone, and you're going to have to earn it repetitively. Each person, you're going to have to keep on earning that. And having said that, you have to allow yourself to be open, like Connie said, to also allow that influence to come up. I think there's a lot of people. The concern we have, also a little bit of a generational concern maybe, but the concern we have right now is that a lot of the older people think that the younger people want it so quick and they don't know how to earn it. That's a big key. And I do think sometimes you have younger people that feel entitled, that jump in the position and want the power of the position without the human relationship. And it doesn't exist that way. I think at the end of the day is, if you're looking up, avoid the stereotype. There are some people that are young that will make for great leaders if we help cultivate them and not give them a reason to push away from us. That's one. Because again, oh, he's an asshole. Yeah, but you were an asshole to him first. So remember that. He became an asshole because you were an asshole first. And for the younger person coming in who believes that they're entitled, guys, don't do that, because the way to connect to the core values is like what Connie said, go back to the senior people, and they could make you better, because as you grow, you have to grow from a point. You have to grow from a foundation, because if you're not, where the hell are you? You're growing over here, growing over there, going over there. No, stay here. So as a senior officer, or a senior staff member, you can help that person. If that new supervisor wants to listen, I can keep you planted, and I can cultivate you with whatever it is new that you're bringing in, but strengthened by what we've always been about, which are these strong values of, let's say, safety and security, whatever it is that you hold dear in the evolution of correction. So the key is for the newer supervisors, don't let go of what they hold on to the most, because the last thing you want to do is go in and think that you can change everything without understanding the roots of what it is that you're affecting. We as seniors, we're willing to evolve. I do believe we're willing to evolve. We're just not willing to change. So if you could give respect to where we are or where we were and move from there, we'll go along with you because we're a part of the process. But if you come in and wipe us out and then just take sole credit for changing everything and moving forward, okay, I'm going to resist. I'm not
have
moving.
One thing to say though, that would require that younger person comes in acknowledging that they are not an expert yet.
Oh, that's going to get in. So, all right, Connie. So that's actually the next part. So let me get Joe in, then you could start off that one. Then would that be okay?
Sure. No, I was just thinking like it's good, like what you were saying, like for the more senior staff to kind of be able to pour in. Like if I come in as like I know it all already, the senior staff is going to be less inclined to want to help, to want to pour in because you know it all already.
Yeah.
Right?
So I want to get into that, Connie, because that, you know what, the thoughts kind of blurred.
Yeah.
But you know what I'll do, because I don't want you to lose that thought. Let me get Joe to finish that, then I'll just have you go right in. So when Joe is done, just go right in, because it is crossing into the growth mindset. So I may have accidentally introduced that, but it relates. It relates. So hey Joe, so what's your thoughts on the embrace vulnerability and insecurities? Now I want to get Connie's thoughts on the growth mindset and being humble.
Well, I mean, when you first walk into a newly promoted position, and you got to keep the open mindset of, number one, you're going to make a mistake. Number two, that you need to show your people that you're not infallible. You want them to understand that you're new, you're going to make mistakes. Work with me, and we will get through this. I don't know it all. I damn sure didn't know it all when I walked in. But when you have senior people on your staff, senior COs at 20, 25 plus years, number one, you've got to respect that. You got to respect them for that, because they were there, prior to me getting there, 10, 15 years prior. And during those times, there were some pretty bloody damn times, and they came through it unscathed, thankfully. And at the same time, as a newly promoted supervisor, you don't know it all. You may have the book smarts to pass the exam and gotten promoted, but do you know the practicality and how to apply it? You need to find some common ground between you and them. And anybody who's smart enough to be anybody in a supervision, a new supervisory role, be vulnerable, be open to criticism from both above and below you. Because trust me, you're going to get the criticism from above you. And, if you do something that's not liked, you're going to get the criticism from below you too. But don't always wear it on your sleeve. Use it constructively. Those old hands are on that ship. They're still there for a reason. And you would be stupid not to use their wisdom to your advantage, and vice versa. There may be policies that they don't know about that you do because you study, but the practical side of the business where they're hands-on, they can teach you some things. So, it's all about finding that common ground, but, you got to walk into that job and let them know that you're not infallible. You don't know it all, because trust me, they will prove you wrong.
Yeah, I like that, Joe. And I like what you said too about wisdom. Wisdom is applied experience. And we kind of crossed into growth mindset, so I want to get Connie's thoughts, but I want to close off one more thing on Connie's embrace vulnerability and insecurity, just to kind of rehash that. I want to make sure we don't miss that. Vulnerability right now in corrections, again, just want to reiterate, most people will be afraid of that word. I want you guys now to start embracing that word within the context of the human connection. That's one thing. And the ability to know that you're not perfect. That's the key. I don't want people to think that vulnerability means that an inmate's going to stab you in the back. That's not what I mean. I mean the ability to learn, but also to learn on an intense level, because vulnerability does allow for that human connection. But there's another thing too, as a supervisor, is that when you embrace vulnerability, you're telling your staff they don't have to be perfect, which allows them to take risk. And guys, listen, when I say these words, don't apply it to the extreme. I don't want people to say, what do you mean by risk? I mean innovation. I want staff to make choices, feel invested, and if they require a course redirection, that's fine. We could do that. But I want to let them know that we are human and we make mistakes. And the last thing I want is for staff to not trust me to admit when they make a mistake and they start hiding them. So again, the vulnerability is a great way to connect, to truly learn, and just to keep that mindful, that I'm not perfect, and nor am I expected to be perfect. So don't be afraid of these words in today's day and age. Vulnerability is a great word for human connection. So again, and for insecurities, we all have them. To sit there and deny it, it's impossible. You're going to just layer it up. It exists. We're all insecure about something. I think sometimes we should embrace it and deal with it. Connie, but I wanted to get into that thought, Connie, with the growth mindset, being humble, knowing you're not the smartest person in the room. I think for a younger supervisor, because they're going in already being judged because they're young, it's paramount for them to have that growth and humble mindset. Would you agree, more so than even for a senior staff member?
Absolutely, because it also allows them to take stock in what they actually know versus what they don't know, right? Because I think that is actually a really great mark of a leader who can actually take a pause. Okay, I don't really know how to do this. Who's the experts here? Let me see what resources I have access to so that we can focus on getting the best possible outcomes. Not that I have to have all the knowledge to make it happen, but I can be the person who knows where to go to get the right people to get the right outcomes, right? And I think that's part of, maybe that's part of just the maturity factor as a young person comes in, but being able to humble yourself and say, like, listen, there's so many things that could go on in a facility. I don't know half of them. I haven't experienced at least half of them, but I know some people who have. Let me make sure that I am aligning with those people so that those are my resources. Like, those are my go-to people to make sure that, one, I'm not out here trying to solve world hunger by myself, right? But two, I've got people who I can go to be like, hey, listen, and how good is that when you can actually create that bond, because I'm now leaning and respecting the fact that you know something I don't know, right? It creates a completely different relationship, I think, with the people you're supervising, especially as a young person who's coming in. That's like, hey, listen, so not only am I now embracing my vulnerability, but I'm also acknowledging, like, I don't know all of this stuff. Like, there's some things I'm really great at, and there's some things I'm not. And these things that I'm not, I'm hoping you guys will help me learn it, right? And I think it's being transparent in that communication, being open about what you know and what you don't know. And I would like to think we're not in a space where, like, someone's gonna use that to their advantage. Yeah, he don't know, so we're gonna do whatever we want to do, right? Which I know that's that vulnerable piece. If they know I don't know, it could be manipulated in a way, right? But I'm hoping that that's not what we're gonna do, because we are supposed to be one team.
Yeah, and what's funny about what you said, Connie? Like, when you have, like, sometimes a frontline person that may not believe that the new supervisor is going to be strong enough because they're young, and they start telling the new supervisor the things they don't know, it's great for the new supervisor to turn around and say, well, then teach me.
Yeah.
Plain and simple, teach me. If you think I don't know it, then show me the way. Yeah. Because the last thing you want for that new supervisor is to feel challenged by that and then wind up making a foolish mistake in their effort to show that they may think they know something when they don't. But most of the time when people generalize and they say, well, you don't know enough, and you ask them, well, tell me specifically what I don't know, it's really just a generalization. Oh, you don't know enough because you haven't been here that long. Okay, but know enough about what? Be specific with me so I know what areas you think I need to work on. And it's funny because most of the time they'll be like, well, how many cell extractions have you been on? Is that really what defines us as being a supervisor? There's, the funny thing is most of us think that to be a good supervisor, I'm not negating it, but hear me out. Just hear me out, because I'm not negating it. But yeah, there is some level of experience. But if you think the best supervisors are the ones that lead the best cell extractions, I mean, that's only one part of the job. I mean, we have many supervisors who can, I believe I'm a great supervisor, but I may not have been the best on cell extractions. That doesn't mean I'm not good somewhere else. To pigeonhole somebody to one thing and think that they have to be the best at that. No, because everybody has their strengths. They have their weaknesses, and the best supervisors know where they are. So if someone says, well, hey, Gangi, you couldn't lead a team. Okay, but I could do this. And the funny thing is, a good thing about being a supervisor is, yeah, you have to have that stuff, the concrete stuff, but there's also a lot of intangibles, that sometimes we leave out. Like, maybe Gangi, here's the unique thing about Gangi. Maybe Gangi is not the best for leading a cell extraction, but man, he gets people that want to work for him. He gets people that want to work for him. So no matter what Gangi does, the people will be the best for him because they feel support and they feel love. So Gangi could just pretty much sit back and people are going to want to work for him because they know somewhere along the line, Gangi's going to have their back. So I think a good test of someone in that leadership ability is really about how the people feel, what they're willing to do for that individual. Because at the end, I always know as a supervisor, I'm always being lifted up by my people. They're the ones that make me better. Because at the end of the day, yes, skill matters, don't get me wrong. But as you start moving up, it's about your ability to delegate, and it's about your relationship to the people that you're delegating with. So moving up is all about growth, allowing yourself to know that I don't know everything, that I am willing to learn. But on the other side of that, you as a frontline person, allowing for that interaction to exist. If this person's willing to learn and you're saying they don't know enough, how about instead of you saying that, you sit down with the person and share some experiences, build some connections. And as much as we think the leader can cultivate the subordinate, most of the time, believe it or not, it's the front line that constantly cultivates the leaders, because the leader is meant to serve. So really, it's the front line that always should make the effort to cultivate the leaders into someone that they feel has the knowledge. But in the end, if I don't know something, then teach me. I mean, Joe, what's your thoughts about growth, being humble, especially if you're new?
Yeah, I mean, if you're new, you got to be humble. One of the best comparisons, and I'll never forget it. I'll go to the grave with this comparison. Was taught to me by an 81-year-old major who had already put in 46 years in the system. And he was a field major at the time, took out the field force. And I remember him passing me one day in the hallway, and he never did talk much. He wasn't much of a talker. He was more of action. And he stopped me in the hall one day, and it was probably about my second week into being a sergeant. And he told me, he said, Sarge, let me tell you something. He said, running a shift is kind of like restoring an old car. He said, you could put a new motor, a new set of tires on it, get you a hell of a driver, and get you somebody who knows how to paint it and make it look sexy. He said you could even make a gremlin look sexy if you got the right people. And I never forgot that, because later on down the road, several months later, it taught me to be more open towards my people and, embrace their wisdom. And, then as a new supervisor, you can start surrounding yourself with the right people, with the right knowledge, and you guys wind up feeding off each other. And then, soon thereafter, you got a pretty fine-tuned machine.
That's right. I did this for you, Joe. And rest in peace, Joe. 1902 to 2142. So I gave you a long life. He lived a life in a used vehicle that had fresh paint. He lived his life as a fraud, but he was happy. We miss you, Joe. You wanted to take it to the grave with you, so I gave you the tombstone.
Right. I'll fit on the tombstone.
Yeah, but guys, I love what Joe said. I mean, in the end, guys, this goes for anybody crossing into a leadership position. I think the moment you realize you're not the smartest person in the room is the moment, you begin to learn, obviously. And someone always said, speak like you're right, listen like you're wrong. That's what leaves you open-minded, guys, And I also like Simon Sinek, be the last person to speak. take everything in and really listen. Really listen and really ask yourself before you input something, is this really needed, or I'm just looking to say this to hear myself speak? Because sometimes, guys, people don't ask questions to get answers. They ask questions because they want to be intelligent, and they want people to hear that they're intelligent. And you're taking away the room or the spotlight from the person who, let's give it to them. It's their moment. They have a concern. Let's hear it. Let's listen to it. Let's not look to challenge, and then find a way at the end of the day to give them back that moment. I think that's the key. I think the big key is if you're going into the position to learn and be humble, what are you also saying? I respect you. I'm telling you to teach me. I'm telling you to help me be better. Why would you not want to be a part of that as a frontline person? Me and Connie were talking about this in the car. It does relate to the topic, but I thought this was unique. And I'll explain it. So as you move up, and let's say you're young, you're going to have a lot of people that may be jealous, because I think that sometimes, the agency could be going after young people because maybe they're looking to get them more committed because they don't want them leaving. Could be a sense. I'm not saying it's fair, but it could be an approach. It could be. You got people that are coming to this profession leaving, so let's try to cement them by giving them a supervisory role, and hopefully they do have some level of experience. But some is because you look around at the senior staff and they just don't want it. And whether they tell you or they just don't do the job correctly, and then the management looks at the younger people like, this guy's gunning or she's gunning, she's a go-getter. We could teach her the position, but I can't teach her passion. I can't teach him passion. So I'm going to go with the newer person, because having said that, they can learn through teaching them what the job's about, but they already got the passion there. But for these older boots, they may know the job, but if I promote them, they don't have the passion, and I'm looking for longevity, especially now. Being a supervisor is more stressful than ever. So if you don't have the passion as a frontline person, I can't have you move up and then supervise people, because the funny thing is, you may know the job, but you're translating a demoralized attitude, or a defeated attitude. So it doesn't help me much. So the problem is management may be calculating this, and I'm not saying it's all right or wrong, but just hear me out from a perspective that I do think applies, not everywhere, but applies. That you're going to get people that are going to hate the fact that you're in that position. You're going to get it. It's natural, and whatever their reasons are, they're going to hate it. You're too young, or I can't believe they chose you over me, whatever it is. But here's the funny thing, though. I'd rather have someone hate me than someone be jealous. Because when someone's jealous, they're jealous because they want your position. And the biggest concern I have with that is that they'll do whatever they can to get that position. So now the problem is this person who should be helping you is sabotaging you. I mean, I'd really rather have someone tell me, nah, I'm not going to help you, man. You're too young. I'm out. I walk away. As opposed to someone who plays the game and, yeah, sure, I'll help you. Sure, I'll help you. You know what I mean? But I want you to fail. I want you to fail because I want your position, because you took it from me. So having said that, I think you could have people right now that could be jealous, and just be mindful of them. This is just straight up advice. Be mindful. Be very wary, because, again, jealousy, people will chase after that position if they feel that they are more worthy. And sometimes we may be open up to advice to a point that we're willing to take it from everyone. And that could be a downfall, because, guys, in my career, I've seen it. So I know that for a fact. So I wanted to add that, but I love your thoughts. And I know, Connie, real quick, we were talking about the car, and that thought hit you. I was wondering why that thought hit you.
I guess because I was just thinking, there's people who feel like they should have gotten a position, right? Look how long I've been here. Maybe they felt they should have been appointed, like all the things that they feel. And then here comes this young person who probably just tested well, right? I mean, whatever the thing was, they got the position. And for me, the struggle has been that person who is constantly undermining the young person who's doing their best to do a great job, right? And like, they don't even know that they're being undermined probably at every turn. So like when you brought up the jealousy versus hateful, I too would rather someone who's going to hate on me as opposed to someone who's jealous, who may be actively sort of plotting my demise, right? Or my failure, who may be soliciting others who they have influence on, since they've now worked with them for all these years, to also join the bandwagon, right? And then you end up with a team who nobody supports you, and hopefully we don't have that sort of group think happening.
Connie, can I ask you, so we're on the same page. I know we are. Do you think that jealousy is a stronger emotion than hate?
So I think it is. Like, I think that with the jealousy, like, there may be no bounds to what you would do to sort of destroy that person, right? Like, I think people are hateful, right? But like, it's very clear, like, I hate you, right? And then they either mess with you or they don't. Like, I don't mess with you, like, because I hate you, right? And they move along, and you could know they have this disdain towards you, right? But like, it's just their feeling, and they're not acting on it. I feel like with the jealousy, you have someone who is actively working to see you fail, right? And who knows what lengths they will go through or go to in order to accomplish that.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm reading something. I'm reading something right now. It says, so hatred is simply not liking something. For example, I hate to eat carrots, or I hate cockroaches, or I hate ants. So the funny thing is, hate usually means, in my opinion, it's not here, but I'm going to equate hate as avoid. Jealousy is usually based on comparison, where you are upset or bitter about someone else having something or doing something that you are or aren't able to do, which in my opinion means there's a chance you still want it. So I think hate leads to avoidance, like we kind of mentioned that, but I'm out. But the jealousy to me could lead to sabotage.
Yep.
You know. But Connie, you had another thought. Do you remember what that thought was before? I just wanted to get your thought, but then you were getting ready to add something else. Or was it okay? Because I didn't want to. I just didn't want us to step over that. I wanted your opinion on that. And hey, Joe, what about Joe? You were 22 when you became a sergeant. Do you think you had people that hated you, or were they jealous of you, or how would you determine the difference?
Oh yeah, I mean, you definitely had them both. You had the ones that were definitely drinking from the jug of haterade, and you know, and then you had the ones that you worked with that were jealous of you because of the fact that either they put in for it and didn't get it and you did, or because you're leaving the shift and you know, all of a sudden now, because I'm a sergeant, I'm a traitor. I'm no longer a CO, I'm a traitor. I'm one of them, one of the dictator machines. You know, jealousy versus hate, you know, in corrections, they can both be just as harmful. You know, how you handle it as an individual is gonna dictate, you know, how things play out. But, you know, the biggest thing is don't feed into it. The more you feed into it, the more it manifests. The more it manifests, the more it gets out of control. You know, as far as one over the other, I mean, to me, they're both just as harmful in a correctional setting.
Yeah, and I think something too, as I'm thinking, if you think about it, so even if jealousy leads to hate, I still feel that hate is it's a settled feeling now. Like, so I get to this point, guys, this is just me thinking about it. I haven't really thought too much of it, but let me just get this thought out because I feel it. I don't know if it's 100% correct, but bear with me on this. I think that, like, when I start to realize I can't get what Connie has, or I can't do what Connie does, then the jealousy may separate and I start just to outright hate you. And that's when it crosses into the avoidance. But I still think the jealousy would maybe be the active part of it all, you know, where I'm still going to make an effort to try. And then eventually when I can't, I may settle into hate. Not because I hate Connie as a person. I hate Connie because she has or is doing what I want to do. And I've seen it happen, guys. I've seen people studying for the exam. One person gets hired over the other. There's immediate jealousy. You could tell by the venting, and, you know, you could see the lack of effort when the person's supervising them, which to me, that is sabotage. When you're not working to your full potential for that supervisor because you want to be in their position, I don't find that to be fair. I find that to be sabotage. And the funny thing is that when you go to say, well, this person is not strong enough. Yeah, well, how do we know? Because you never did what you were supposed to do for them. You know, technically, if there's a supervisor that you feel is not strong enough, you still put your best foot forward. So when the determination is made, it's not because they have the lack of resources, it's because they have the lack of heart and they can't do the job. So I find that if you're not putting your best foot forward for every supervisor, well, that to me could be an act of sabotage. Again, especially with supervisors that are trying to do the right thing, but you're just upset because they're doing something that you rather be doing because, again, maybe they studied a little more or whatever the case may be. But I just wanted to get that side out. I thought that was a good dialogue for me and Connie, and just something we could explore, whether we find it to be correct or not. It's always worth the dialogue. And the last part, this is interesting. I'll have Joe do this because this was pretty much Joe's one thought that he added to this.
That was my one hitter quitter for the year.
So I'm just joking, guys. So Joe mentioned something, and I thought this was pretty good, a great way to end it. I made this one the last one because I thought this was unique and we never touched on this before. So I thought we could have a little fun with it before we sign off. But it's bridging the age gap. So Joe, let's do this, Joe. When did you? Because you were a sergeant when you were 22. So let me ask you a question. You had to bridge the age gap twice, because when you were a sergeant and you were 22, you had to supervise older people. But then I'm sure as you got older, Joe, you didn't stay 22 your whole career. Then it's a different type of gap. Now you're supervising younger people. So let's talk about bridging the age gap. So what are the concerns when you yourself are the supervisor who's a lot younger than the older frontline staff?
Well, anybody who's been in a correctional setting long enough knows that, things come and go in cycles. The age of inmates, tend to get younger. Your older ones get out. Same thing kind of goes with the staff. Coming in as a new employee, you're coming in at a time where, you're getting towards the end of a cycle where a lot of your hands have been there for 20, 25 years already and are pretty short to retirement. So when you're coming in, you're already looked down upon, number one, because you're 22. You just got here. You've been here a year. They've been here 25. So the question is, how do you bridge that gap? How do you find the even ground? How do you find common ground with them? And that's where the, key as an employee or, as a supervisor, as a new supervisor, is to learn your people, learn their ins and outs. And, a lot of these COs that have been there for a long time, even though they didn't promote, a lot of them could have promoted, just chose not to for whatever reason. They didn't want the responsibility, wanted to be, they didn't want to be changed, have their shift changed every 6 months. A lot of them have a lot of hidden wisdom within them that you can use to your advantage, tips and tricks of the facilities, tips and tricks of certain inmates. You have that staff that, if things break bad, that, they can act as a supervisor at any given moment, and how they would react in situations. Those are the things that you have to look for and kind of cope with. Not only in the interim it'll help you bridge that gap, it'll also cut down on the level of disdain between you and them, because basically as a new supervisor, when you come in, you got to earn that. It's not automatic. Just because you have this on your collar doesn't command instant respect. The way you handle your job and the way you empower your staff, that's what gains you respect. And, as I got to the end of my career, they're recruiting people straight out of high school. I mean, we were sending people to sophomore and junior level career days to start recruiting people to come to our agency. And now that I'm that old cantankerous, stuck in my ways, 250-year-old lieutenant, and I'm dealing with this 18-year-old that looked like they just fell out of their high chair. It's, you stop and think as that person thinking, I'm looking at this 18-year-old the same way that Officer John Buford looked at me when I walked my 22-year-old, 130-pound, scrawny noodle-looking ass up in that penitentiary. So you come to kind of see it full circle.
Circle.
You know, it's I guess it's the penitentiary circle of life, if you want to call it that. You know, so it's more humbling towards the end than it is at the beginning. I can assure you, because you know, when you start seeing them younger faces come in, and you know, your level of patience is getting shorter as your years start to climb more and more higher. You know, you see that end circle, and you start thinking to yourself, wow, that's the same way they looked at me when I walked in this penitentiary 28 years ago.
You know, it's so funny that you said that. I remember this movie For Love of the Game where he's pitching the perfect game, and he doesn't really notice he doesn't want to notice that he's pitching the perfect game, but Kevin Costner, he also starts to look at why he's playing the game, because it's his last game, how much time has passed, and now he's the older one, you know, where he was the younger one at one point. But I think from my perspective here, when you're younger and you are getting ready to supervise older individuals that have been in the career for a little bit, if you're going to go in thinking you could change things right away without giving respect to, you know, where they are at the moment, you're going to get resistance right off the bat. And it's just not a good look your first day, because initial impressions matter. I mean, you want to do whatever you can to facilitate open arms and not folded arms. So, I mean, you know, as soon as you go in, you know, you got to tell them that you're open. I think, to be honest with you, as soon as you go in, it's your mouth closed, their mouth open. You know, let's hear what they have to say, and let me just shut up. And then eventually you'll play your role. I think a lot of young people too may think they have to go, the moment they're given that supervisory position, they think they have to go right in and supervise. And granted, let me just try to explain that a little bit. These people have been doing the job. And yeah, I know that you're their supervisor now, and eventually you'll earn that respect, and you'll get that permission to leave. But you got to see how it runs first before you start thinking that you have to supervise everything. So I think that's good advice too, you know.
But young or old.
Yeah, right. Young or old.
If you go into a new place, you need to observe and see how things are running before you try to go change anything.
Absolutely.
I think it's even harder if you're a younger person who doesn't have the experience that would inform some of those changes that you're going to try to implement. So I think, you know, just to clarify that, young or old, if you go into a facility, you definitely need to take some time to observe. And I get it. Sometimes when you go into a facility, it's under different circumstances, right? Some are sent like, we need you to go change stuff. We need you to go shake things up. But there's even a way to do that, right? As long as you take some time to observe what's going on, to see what's happening firsthand, as opposed to taking action based on something someone told you that you haven't seen for yourself.
Right. And I want to add something to that, by the way. Let me just get there. When I first became, so let's do this. I became a sergeant. How old was I? So 2011, what was I? 34 maybe? Because I became a superintendent in 2015. So that's 8 years ago. That's about right, because I was probably around 37, because I'm 45 now. So, you know, it's funny because when I became a sergeant, I was like, okay, that's about average age. That's a good time. When I crossed into administration, everybody was a little bit older, even though I felt, you know, I only had 12 years in my career when I made superintendent. I jumped up so many levels. So I was also young in my career at that time. And for a moment, I did feel that I was very inexperienced. But I felt that on day one, which was unfair to me, because I was comparing myself to people who has been doing the job for years. I mean, so I gave myself this unfair comparison. So I'm thinking of that right now, is that when you become a supervisor and you're new, be careful who you compare yourself to. Remember, you're not going to be your best on the day one. So don't compare yourself to someone who's already their best at 20 years in. You know, you have to always remember that you're in that position because you have potential, and that potential to reach something. You know, you're not meant to be there at that moment. You always have that potential. But I think understanding that, you know, if you're going to try to go in expecting to be the best on day one and thinking that you have to impress as opposed to making an impact, which means that I got to go in and be the best supervisor so I can be recognized and seen, you're going to make a lot of foolish choices. It's already selfish to begin with, so you have to go in and kind of let others be seen, if that makes any sense. Let the front line be seen and heard. But what's your thoughts on that? I'll go with Joe first, but what's your thoughts on for people that are young that may feel they have to make up for that by going the extra mile and looking to impress others as opposed to really understanding the position?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to impress somebody, you're doing the wrong job to begin with. You're not there to impress nobody. You're there to, assert respect for your staff. You're there to, gain respect from your staff. And, trying to be impressive is, I guess it's okay out the gate. But, later on down the road, impressing somebody it's just not impressing anymore. Having that wisdom, the knowledge, the tact, the ability to communicate with your staff effectively, to me, that's more impressive than anything. If you can do that and keep a well-oiled machine, that's more impressive to me than anything. I don't care about your book smarts. I don't care, about your knowledge and granted, our workforce supervision is getting younger and younger. 20 years ago when I first started, or 25, 30 years ago when I first started, college wasn't wrapped up into any of this. There was no college degrees required. It was all based on experience, the number of years of experience. Now, as our workforce supervision is getting younger and younger because of the college being added into job requirements and stuff like that, the amount of experience has dwindled for the most part. And, the way you communicate with your staff is not as effective as it was back then. So for me, effective communication, a good persona as far as tact goes. If you can carry yourself well and be humble and be an open communicator, to me, that I'll take that any day of the week.
All right, and what's your thoughts on that, Connie?
I mean, the first thing that's kind of still lingering in my mind is this need to come in and impress on day one, right? Like, I feel like when you're young, and even if you put forth all the effort to be impressive on day one, day two is coming, right? like you might have did the best thing day one, and day two is completely different from day one. And the more that you've worked in this environment, the more you recognize that there is no one day the same as the day before. And so you're going to have to constantly be sharpening those tools and learning from people, learning from the environment. Oh, this happened yesterday, but these were the circumstances. The environment is so dynamic, which is probably my only concern about a younger person coming in. The change is so fluid that you've got to be able to think quickly on your feet. You've got to be able to synthesize information. You've got to be able to take in bits and pieces from whoever is giving it to you and try to make the best decision possible in the moment. And sometimes I think that executive functioning or that critical thinking, like everybody doesn't have that, and it's not fully developed in everyone. And so I think there's a greater challenge that comes when you have someone who comes in who doesn't necessarily have the experience, right? And so I think if I come in as a young person and I can acknowledge, like, listen, I'm gonna do my best, right? Like all of this stuff that's gonna be happening, like just give me some grace, because I'm probably gonna fall on my face, right? A time or two. But like, I think you have to be able to say that, right? Like it doesn't diminish that you're a good person, that you're gonna give 100%, that you're going to be there for your team, that you're going to hold yourself accountable, that you're going to fall on the sword for some people, right? Like this, I feel like that's just a reality of being a leader. but you also just have to acknowledge that no day is the same, and you're going to experience things that you've never experienced before. And there are going to be people there who have the knowledge and the know-how and the insights that you don't have. You need them, and they're going to need you too, right? Because like as Joe said, right, they just studied these policies. You don't even remember what those policies were, right? And these may be the people who are going to write that report and save your tail because they know the details that needs to be in the report, right? You forgot. And so, I mean, I think the moment that we can just acknowledge sort of the strengths that each other are bringing, like it's really going to make for a more, I guess, I don't want to say harmonious, but like just,
that's fine.
Yeah, like just a more harmonious workspace. Because here it is, we're just acknowledging like, okay, I got my shortcomings, you got yours, we're gonna figure this out, let's just work together, right? But like, I think it's the coming in and feeling the need to impress, like you just got to throw that out the window. Like you need to just come in and learn. Let me come in and learn.
And Connie, I'm not afraid anymore to say the softer terms. I've been on the channel for a while. I'm over a decade now, but it's true. I mean, people will put some wild context on it, based on some extreme, but they miss the meaning. I mean, I did a show the other day about finding meaning with your work. And then of course you get the person who's like, yeah, you want me to find meaning when helping a rapist? It's like, I just gave you a whole 12-minute video. Is that the only thing you took from it? I mean, that's not on me now, but listen, guys, I mean, even in this job, as a supervisor, I mean, obviously young, old, doesn't matter. The point is, even as frontline, you're going to exhaust effort. There's meaning and purpose behind it. It makes it worth it. It keeps you fueled. But I want to mention something too with the impress part. If you always look to impress, you're always going to be inconsistent with who you be, because you're living in someone else's reflection of you, as opposed to your own levels of expectations. Yeah, the agency has expectations, but you still have a way to be the best you within those restrictions, as long as you're able to find where you fit, where that purpose fits it and molds it a little bit. But if you're looking to constantly impress, like Connie said, I'm impressing Connie today, I'm going to impress Joe tomorrow. Who the hell are you? I don't know who you are. That's
such an important thing you just highlighted, right? Because your audience is always going to change, right? Like, so the fact that you would never be coming in and being your true self, like how do you can't sustain that.
And what's funny about that is kind of goes in with the manipulation thing in the book I have there, where I talk about, for officers that look to be popular, the inmates will control you, because your decisions aren't based on, what's right. It's based on you being popular, which will sway with whatever the inmates want. So same thing here. If I'm looking to impress and I'm looking to be popular, everything I do is really for someone else. It's for what they would expect. And sometimes, guys, is you have to have some consistency with who you are. And at that point, that consistency will help you be the best you can be, again, within the defined prescribed role. And I know that works. But again, this isn't a, like Joe said, this isn't a profession where you impress. This is a profession where you make an impact. I'm not looking to be a celebrity. I'm looking to be a decisive leader, regardless of what position I'm in. Now, here's the tough question. As we come to a close, who should I have go first, Joe or Connie? So who's going to have the more powerful thought? So
Joe.
Okay, so that means I got to start with you, Connie. So what's your wait, hold on. So Joe, what's your thoughts? You think you agree with Connie? Are you going to have a more powerful thought than Connie?
Well, it is getting to be like 11 o'clock at night.
Anything's possible now.
Anything's possible. I am fallible at this point.
Well, you want to do? How can we do this? You want to do ladies first, or you want to go first? Hey, you know what? Here, let's do this. Okay, this is the great, because I'm gonna be indecisive. Okay, so the closing thoughts will go to.
Oh, geez. So is it me since I'm first on the screen, or am I only first on my screen?
You see how Anthony just ran to the background.
Oh my God.
I'll go first. It don't matter. in the closing thoughts, as a new supervisor, you got to make sure that you're infallible. Don't be there to impress anybody, because if you're there to try to impress somebody, all you're doing is giving away a piece of yourself little by little, and sooner or later you're not going to have anything left to give. Be there to be consistent, be there to be fair. Don't be there to impress, because at the end of the race, you're not going to have very many people at the finish line waiting for you, other than the one that you tried to impress and wind up getting impressed by somebody else. Be you. My style was to go in and observe things first, because I wanted to see the operations of the shift. I wanted to see what the morale of the shift was. And if you walk into a already well-tuned machine, don't go in there trying to fix something that's not broke. I'm not saying that it's not healthy to point out suggestions or maybe tips or something to make things a little bit better. But don't try to go in there trying to fix something that's not broke. Don't go in there trying to strong arm, because like Anthony said, the first thing you're going to get is resistance. And you're not there to get resistance. You're there to offer knowledge, wealth, and teamwork. So just be who you were to begin with. You don't need to impress nobody. There's nobody there to, important enough to need to impress. Listen to your people. Just because they're old or they're young, some of them bring good things to the table on either end of the spectrum. And, I learned that firsthand. Listening to some of my elders, even though, I supervised them, to me, they were still my elders. I was always open to hints, tips, tricks, and whatever they had to offer me. And sometimes, there was a couple of occasions where it's actually saved my life. So, don't discard the old hands just because they're cantankerous. They still have things to offer. And don't put the young bucks back in the high chair and try to stuff them in the closet, because, a lot of them bring innovation. A lot of them bring, fresh air and a new blood in there. Everybody's got something to offer. So don't be quick to discount anybody.
All right, Joe, I'm going to put Dyfus's number up only because there was a statement that you said. It could have been some parenting skill you've done in the past where
it wasn't Priya. Shut up.
Hey, Connie, what's your final thought, Connie?
So I guess my final thought is, if you're coming in as a younger leader and you're going to manage some older staff, like, be confident in knowing that the job is already yours, right? So when you walk in, you're not walking in for their approval, right? You're walking in and you want to make sure that you set the stage for mutual respect, but you also want to make sure in doing so that you leverage their experiences so that you can learn, right? Like, because that's what's going to get you to the next step. Being able to really learn new skills, take on or absorb the stuff that they're sharing, and try to find some commonality where, like, it doesn't have to be so serious all the time, right? Because I think, yes, you're there to do a job and you're accountable for all these things, which is great, but these are also your people, right? And so if you don't take time to get to know your people, it is going to be a challenging road for you. And I say that because when you know your people, you won't take their feedback personal. Like, you can actually take their feedback and grow from the feedback. Examine the feedback. How did this show up? Oh, okay. Well, maybe I need to do this different, right? When you align and have sort of some common ground, and you get to know your people and know their motivations and know where some of these words are coming from, the things they tell you, where's that coming from? Is it coming from a good place, not a good place? And do your best to, I think, understand those motivations. And also, how do you apply any of this stuff to your learning and your growing and your process in this new role. So, I mean, quite honestly, I feel like it is a great experience to go from a sort of coming from the front line or being a young leader going in and managing older people, because they teach you things that you don't even have no insight into. I mean, I stepped into leadership. I was 22 maybe. And like some of the things that the older staff taught me, I was like, what? Yeah, I'm supposed to do what? Like it was things that like so certainly not being in law enforcement and knowing nothing about this criminal element, where I was already at a disservice. But the fact that they were telling me things that like were not even thoughts in my head, were like the gems that like I couldn't get anywhere else. Right. And I think that there's a certain level of reverence that you pay to people who've already walked the walk, who've already gone through all these things that you can't even imagine them happening, but you're being able to absorb those experiences and use what they've given you to make you an even better leader in the future.
That's powerful, Connie. And Connie, just to kind of Joe, finish my thoughts. I mean, again, reiterate the fact that you're there to grow. I mean, that's the key. But I want to mention something else. I think when you're young, like Joe was, he was 22. I think I was across the admin. I think I was on the younger side, but more young in regards to my career, only having 12 years in. Because again, you could be young by age or just young in your career, however it works. And if you have people that define experience by time, I think that's a mistake. So again, if you're front line and you only look at time as someone having evaluated experience, stop. That right off the bat is wrong. But I want to mention something though. So your rank gives you a surface respect at first. It does. You come in, I'm a supervisor, and you should have this surface respect. But that doesn't last long. I mean, the respect underneath for who you are as a leader and more importantly, why you do it is the respect that will actually surpass the surface respect of just being a supervisor of rank. So again, there's going to be that, well, I gotta respect you because my supervisor, but then there's that I want to respect you because you're just a good person, a good leader and whatnot. And that's what we always want to strive to be. And you can't do that if you don't, invest in your people. That's the key, regardless if you're young, old, doesn't matter. But when you're young, and you're stepping into that leadership position, and as we said before, there is going to be that want to impress because you're young and you think the cards are against you and you think you have more to prove, and you need to do the opposite. You need to go in humble, not looking to prove anything, and just asking the front line to help cultivate you into that position. And here's the best part of it all. If the front line helps cultivate you into that position, regardless of your age or not, they're going to want you to succeed because they've invested time in you. So it's beneficial for them to succeed in that because then it's not wasted effort and time on them. So again, it's a balanced relationship. But in the end, it's a relationship that literally is all about growth and development and from both sides. I want to be your leader. Will you allow me to lead? And I don't see nothing wrong with asking that question at all. Not in today's day and age. Will you allow me to lead? Your call. Teach me. If I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, just teach me. As always, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe and interact again. Show is Anthony Gangi. That almost came out.
I was about to say, I don't even think that was a Freudian slip.
It is late, guys, over here. It's well, Joe's complaining because it's what is it, Joe, by you? 11 o'clock?
Yeah, it's 11 o'clock here.
It's 12 o'clock here. So it's an hour more, Joe. So we've lived an hour longer than you. So if you were to become my supervisor, you would be too young for me because I'm an hour older than you. I could tell you what's going to happen in your life for the next hour. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't subscribed, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.